Hello, everyone. Welcome to Knowledge Bytes, AI-powered teaching, elevate, innovate, differentiate series. This is our second session, AI Basics from Beginner to Pro with Prompt Engineering. It's presented by me, Jose Adorno, from the Digital ATDN Coordinator, and we have...
I'm Brianna Patriarca. I'm a digital ATDN technology specialist and a technology specialist for EastCon.
We're very excited to present this series. Our kickoff session happened in Digital Day with Rachel Riggs, and that recording will be available later this week. And we have a few other sessions that we're gonna just touch upon at the end. But the focus of this is to jump in, use AI tools, and have our little assistants, as you see, like the image here, which is created by this was used with Microsoft Bing. You have a little robot here, Pixar style, and it's powered by DALL-E 3, which is one of the bots that you could do images with. So the first thing before we jump in and talk about AI and everything around, everything we have prepared for you today, I just want to have a little quick activity, right? Using your chat without going into too much of the without giving you too much of a context. I want you to, once you see on the screen what pops up in the next slide, share in the chat which ones do you recognize? Do you know the name? Do you use it? If you know from what program or what year, that's bonus. You don't have to. But this is just to just share out what you guys are familiar with, okay? So in 3, 2, 1, go. Give you like about 30 seconds or so just to... No, you will not be lost if you missed the first session. Oh, thank you, Brianna. You put in the chat anyone that you recognize. The first one I recognize back in the day was this one, this little buddy right here.
The OG paperclip.
Yes, Clippy.
Is that, I was going to say, I recognize it, but I don't remember its name. Okay.
Clippy. It was from Microsoft
Thank you.
Word. This was Microsoft Word. It wasn't technically AI. It was more of automations. So based on what you were doing in the word processor, it would determine the probability of you, let's say, writing a letter, and then all of a sudden, oh, can I help you? And it'll give you like all these different prompts. Interestingly, when I was looking into it, it was very controversial because it was offering advice when no one asked once you were like used to it. So it got it was taken off the table. I don't it was a couple years that it was and then they just removed it. But I see in the chat Alexa, Grammarly, Google, Clippy. Oops, I have an Alexa over here. Let's start.
I have one called Big Fart that is...
There you go. See? So we have Alexa, Grammarly, yep, Google Maps, Bixby, yep, all but Bixby and Dragon. Dragon, naturally speaking, was a speech to text back in the day when that wasn't an option. Now a lot of it is just integrated in the computer. Yeah, and then with Google, just Google with the maps, just to point this out, and we'll continue. They've been using a lot of AI just to determine routes, the time that it'll take you to get there, to determine traffic when it slows down, and those sometimes you're driving in, you'll see like that little yellow bar because it's slowing down and all that stuff. There's AI involved that analyzes all that information and tries to give you up to date. So these are already integrated. There's nothing that you do differently, but we're going to be talking about this as well as we go into like the more specific AI that is customized to do specific things as well. And here, well, traditionally, we engage with technology, but typing was our main input. So we'll go here in the search bar, we will enter what we're looking at. We could do this in Google and in the search engines, and everything's indexed right by text, and you could just find everything that you're looking for or not find it and go into rabbit hole looking for the resources. And then today, one of the differences with inclusion of AI is that you could use different inputs at any given time. So it's not just typing, but you could also speak, and you say what you're looking for, and it'll do a search for you, and you'll get the results. And then maybe you want to type it and customize it a little bit. And maybe there's an image. You saw a bug outside, which I've been doing a lot lately because the girls are always interested with the different animals that we see outside. I have a 6 and a 9-year-old, very curious. Saying you'll take a picture, you'll look it up automatically, it'll tell you what animal it is, or maybe not because it was a bad picture and that kind of thing. But it's the way that AI is engaging has facilitated and closed that breach into allowing you to use multiple inputs or multiple ways to search for something. With that, we have 4 objectives today. Our first objective is to teach participants the basics of creating prompts that align with educational goals. We're also going to provide participants with strategies to adapt prompts that cater to individual adult learners' needs, interests, and skill levels. We will also develop AI-based responses into activities and lessons that help supplement and differentiate content. And last but not least, we'll have a chance to participate in a Q&A session where participants can bring questions revolving around AI-powered teaching with chatbots like ChatGPT, Bard, and Bing. Brianna.
Yes. So the biggest benefit of AI is that it's time saving. You can use it to automate long processes, to create content, to differentiate that content as a communication tool, or I should say a communication generator tool, and to brainstorm and problem solve. If you want to go to the next slide. So to example that, here are some ways that it could be used to improve your workflow. You can target areas for improvement. So you can put in some data that doesn't have any student identifying information in it and ask it to identify, what areas need continued improvement. You could take content and resources and say, please align this with this set of standards, whether it's CCRS, ISTE, North Star. You can use it to easily differentiate activities and lessons just by saying, here's my activity and lesson, differentiate it for this level, this level, this level, or this reading level. You can also access certain accessibility features and have it, translate or whatever you basically really need it to do, so that whether it's text to speech for certain programs, not necessarily ChatGPT, but there is a component DALL-E, so you could do like maybe a picture dictionary using DALL-E. You can also challenge ideas via role play. So if you are problem solving something and you really want it to, are trying to figure out those potential barriers or those issues that might pop up, you could basically ask the chatbot, identify the barriers. Here's what I have. Tell me what are potential issues. Tell me potential weak spots, things like that. It's a great tool to brainstorm ideas. I actually was just using it just before coming into this training to help me come up with an acronym for something that I'm doing for digital ATDN down the line. You can also use it to develop outlines. I know Jose and I used it when we were trying to come up with some of our goals and objectives for the Knowledge Bytes and to outline some of the key points that were relevant. And to create templates. So, if you want a template for an email or lesson or activity, you can easily use it and generate it very quickly using chatbot AIs.
So in one sentence, and this is just I'm putting here. Can you tell me what is a chatbot? And what we did here, you're gonna see the video play. There was the same question was asked to 3 different AIs. So right now, ChatGPT already generated the answer, what I was saying. Bing is doing its now, and then the other one was Inflection AI, which is called Pi. And all of them came up with the same, pretty much the same answer, right? So it's a chatbot is a computer program that simulates human conversation with an end user. Now, the difference here between the 3, and we're going to look at it the next slide, is that in the prompt here, which you could play back when you receive the slides, Bing AI will give you like the links where it's pulling the information from. So it tends to take longer. You have ChatGPT, which is the common one, the one that started, which we found out that last week on the 30th, on the day on Digital Learning Day, it was the day that it was the first, it was his first year of it. It's 1 year old, right? And then you have Pi, which is like this one is very similar to ChatGPT, but it's very strong in communication and it speaks to you. So like you'll have like this little audio piece and it'll read everything. It still sounds robotic, but it's the more natural sounding one that I've encountered so far. And then you have Google Bard, which is Bing's, which is Google's side. So these are links here. You could try them out and it'll take you to that page and you could play around with these.
Oh, I do think we should note that some districts may have limitations on this. Like, for example, I can't access Google Bard using my EastCon Google account. And same with Bing, like the setting on my work laptop restricts me from using the Bing AI. So just something to be aware of if you're using like a work device to try to play around with these. You might be limited with some of them.
Correct. You won't know until you click on them. So it'll tell you like you don't have access or your agency doesn't allow access. With some of these, especially at the beginning, we use personal accounts because we're just testing them out. Some agencies have allowed one or the other, so sometimes just reaching out to IT. You might know which ones work in your area, but accessing these using a personal account would allow you to experience these that way. So here we have kind of like a little snapshot of like 3 that we had selected. The first one is ChatGPT. This is based on the free version. There is a 4.0 version, or what they call ChatGPT Plus, that has additional functionality. We don't want to talk about paid versions. We were just focusing on free. You have Microsoft Bing as our second one, and you have Google Bard. All 3 you need to have an account to use, but they're all free to access. Again, it just depends on the district policy on the specific AI usage or tools. So the first thing, AI chatbot that uses natural language processing to answer questions. And by questions, we're looking at prompts. So you put in a prompt in, and then it'll generate a response to you. So all 3 are able to do that. Integrations to other programs and applications, all 3 allow you to have some sort of integration. ChatGPT is one of the paid features that allow you like multiple integrations. So usually if it doesn't do it, well, all of 3 of you will say, I can't do that. But ChatGPT will say, oh, well, we have this under ChatGPT Plus or ChatGPT 4. The training data, this is the data set that was used to train the chatbots in giving you answers and the content that it's based off of. ChatGPT 3.5 is up to January 2022. with ChatGPT for April 2023. Microsoft Bing is up-to-date data. It takes longer to respond, but it looks through search results and it gives you based on what the results that come up, and it'll cite and all that for you. And then Google Bard is up to July 2022. Just as a plus to that, you can ask the chatbot to tell you the links to resources, and I mean this could be talked upon later on as well. But sometimes you ask for the link, and because the data set is from 2022, that link might not be active anymore. So when you click on it, it throws you to an empty spot, to a dead end. So that sometimes happens, but sometimes it'll let you know like the source or like the general website. You have to do some digging, and that being the case. So save your chats for easy view. I have here ChatGPT and Google Bard. When we were working through this, throughout each one, Bing's has an option actually, but it's not as easy to go back and it's easily overlooked. So because it's not easy, it's not checked, but you can pull. And then generating images, ChatGPT 4 uses DALL-E, and then Microsoft Bing also uses DALL-E, but it allows you to use it for free. As of the time of this presentation, we found out that as we explored AI tools, some of these change and they're ready to go into the paid to the paid realm, and some of those are not available. So as of the time of this, as of 3:50, it's available for free. Okay, so custom instructions for ChatGPT. We are not going to jump in too much with this today, but this allows ChatGPT, it's a new feature that came out, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, where it allows you to give custom instructions. As you will see when Brianna is going to go a little bit more deeper into this, you have to give it some context. And answering these questions here will allow you to not repeat that context when you're starting a conversation with the AI chatbot. You'll enter here information about you, general information, not your date of birth or anything like that. You're looking at more, an adult education teacher that teaches ESL for multi-level ESL students, and we use the ELP framework and that kind of information, right? And then how would you like ChatGPT to respond? Then allows you to, I would like you to give me everything in bullet lists and sort it out as an idea and that kind of thing. Now, there's a few benefits in using this feature. One of them is that it provides custom instructions to all new chats you create. So if you've already been using ChatGPT, anything that's already created, it's not going to apply. It only applies to any new conversation. So going forward, it'll take your custom instruction into account. It also streamlines how you will like ChatGPT to respond to your prompts, which is, if you wanted to give you a paragraph, or you don't want it to give you an entire essay of something. Oh, just give me 3 sentences. Everything that I ask you is give me 3 sentences, right? And you could give it like that. And then you have the ability to change it. So if you tried it now, doesn't mean that you're stuck with that forever. And then big thing here, right? You have your thought starters here for these are your snapshots directly from ChatGPT. But remember, never enter private or identifiable information to the ChatGPT or other AI tools. Everything gets into like their kind of database data set. So you don't want to enter any identifiable information from you or from any student and things like that. Don't put any names in anything that could compromise the safety of that person or yourself, right? I don't know if you want to jump in on, you want to add something on this, Brianna?
Nope, nope, just name, date of birth, any IDs, I would be a little leery of adding as well, especially if they could be public record IDs. Um, just anything that could identify a person, really. Yeah, you want to avoid.
Yep. If you won't share it with the person next to you, then don't share it in ChatGPT
Yeah,
or in AI.
and don't share links to documents that contain those things either.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So we have here an example prompt. We had a lot of interesting conversations prepping all this, and we came up with a prompt that we wanted to ask the same prompt to different chatbots. I won't read through all of these, but they're here, so when you get the slides, you can look through these. But the prompt goes, describe the impact of technology on adult education high school completion and adult English as a second language students in 2 to 3 sentences. So I need to fix that before we send it out. Considering both positive and negative aspects, right? So we have ChatGPT's response, which we just copied and paste. We have Google Bard's response. And as you can see a couple of differences from both, right? And then you have Microsoft Bing's response, right? We had to do a snapshot because it wouldn't it was difficult to show this aspect here. And when we were looking at when we are not analyzing the responses, right, we wanted to see how well the AI bots were to answer, how close were the AI bots to what we were looking for, right? So here we have highlighted 2 to 3 sentences and positive and negative aspects. So with ChatGPT, we had answers, the answers to prompt. It was 1 paragraph and 3 sentences. With Google Bard, it answered the prompt. There was 2 paragraphs and 7 sentences, 4 in the first paragraph, 3 in the second. And for Microsoft Bing, you had the answers to prompt and 1 paragraph, 5 sentences, 3 citations, and 7 links for additional information. So evaluating how well the chatbot did based on what we were asking, ChatGPT was the only one that matched the both requirements. It was within 2 to 3 sentences, and it was both positive and negative. You had both positive and negative aspects, right? With Google Bard, you had a little bit of a lengthier response, even though it was giving you positive and negative aspects. And then with Bing, it was similar to Bard. Difference here is that it gave you 7 additional links for additional information. So technically, we did get everything that we needed from all 3. It's just we got more than what we asked for, which we could then, as we get to know more the bots, we could always ask questions and or do like a second prompt to get the information that we're looking for. With that said, when we are engaging with AI, it's helpful to approach prompts like you do rubrics in student writing. So you specify how you will like the response. You're looking at the format, the number of sentences, the writing style that you will like from it, right? And then you also do follow-up prompts to get additional information or refine responses. So you're setting up like that rubric to see, like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I would like for you to give me the answer. And then the second point is more of a, okay, yes, you are in the realm of what I'm looking for, but not quite. I want you to give me this instead, or I want you to focus on this area. And that's like that reprompting. So just like you're evaluating a student writing and you're trying to give them a little bit of additional information. It's not a one and done. You just could continue going back and forth with the chatbot until you receive what you're looking for. Thank you, Brianna. Okay, so we have one link here. This is the open prompt book from ChatGPT. This was from Role Dedication and Crowded Learning. The collection of prompts was from an EdTech makerspace that took place in July 2023 with adult education or adult adult education practitioners. And there were like about over 100 people in that first session. I couldn't see after that, but I was part of the group, and they kind of went through AI, and everyone just jumped in and tried to kind of find what ways that we could use and ask questions and all that. It's very resourceful. It has different examples, how you could ask your prompts, links to additional information, quotes for, and this is all based off of users and teachers and instructors just like us that explore this and shared what worked with them and what they use in the classroom and all that. So that link here, it's available for you, and Brianna shared it with you. With that, I will pass it on to. Oh, you want to share screen, right?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Okay. Oops. Ah. Okay. What is everybody seeing? Okay, you're seeing the wrong
I
screen.
see your
You're seeing
notes,
my
yeah.
notes. I have too many windows open on too many screens. I got lost. All right, let's try that again. So I need this one. Okay. It's because I didn't look at those numbers. There we go. Okay.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. So we can catch up. So a framework can be helpful in developing your prompt. So EdTech utilized the RACEF framework as part of CampGPT. And the components of that framework are role, action, context, example, format, and I added one more component that I felt we kind of needed for one of the resources we're going to talk about later on, which is confirm. So I'm going to call it RACEF plus C, just to shorten it up. So when you're developing prompts, they might not require all of these components in the framework, but we're going to just go over each one of these in more detail so you understand what they are comprised of. So in terms of role, we want to tell the chatbot to act as whatever role we feel best aligns with the goal of our prompt. So Jose did mention with I'm going to say CapGPT instead of ChatGPT now. With ChatGPT, you can do those custom instructions where you can define that role. The one thing that I would caution with that is that it's going to automatically default to that role. So if you work in a few different positions, like for example, my role is a technology specialist, but that title doesn't necessarily work when I'm talking about my kind of sub role as a professional development person. So I adjust my role to act accordingly. So I'll change it if I'm talking about outlining a PD to act as a professional development trainer for my prompt. So you want to think about the context, what that chatbot should be writing from. So that's going to kind of give them that kind of initial starting point when they're developing your prompt. And it's also going to kind of start to give them an idea of who the target audience might be. So once we've defined our role, we want to give them an action. So we want to identify the task and the topic for the prompt. So we're really identifying what we want the prompt to focus on and generate. So for example, do we want them to generate an outline, a lesson plan, an email, a formula for Excel or Google Sheets? And we also want to provide any background knowledge to help focus in that prompt. So for example, if you are in the middle of a unit and you are looking for some inspiration or maybe to add in another lesson, it would be helpful to identify what's already been covered, that prior knowledge, so that when it produces those topics, it's really focusing in on new topics versus things you may have already covered. And for teachers, another good thing to identify is if it needs to align to a specific standard or framework. So whatever it's creating, what is that task, that topic, and any prior knowledge that it needs to be aware of to really focus in the prompt. Next, we have context. So we really want to identify the target audience. We want to specify who it is for and how it should be written. So for example, if the target audience is lower level ESL students, you might want to specify in your prompt that it should be brief and simply written. You can even identify a specific language level. So that way it can tailor it to make sure that it is being written for the audience that you are intending it for. We want to provide examples and we want to set guidelines for the prompt. So we want to identify the do's and don'ts. What can it do? What we don't want it to do. For example, I mentioned that I was coming up with an acronym. I had to be very specific in what I did want it to do. It could use synonyms. It could change the order of the words, but I didn't want it to stray away from certain topics. So I had to be very specific, and I still was going back and forth a few times trying to clarify those do's and don'ts to make sure that it was generating what I wanted it to. I also, in that the same example, had to provide an example of what I meant because it kept altering. And we weren't understanding each other in the moment, what I wanted it to do. So I provided an example so that it could then have something to go off of. You could also use it to match tone. So if you want it to generate an email, but you don't want it to feel so kind of robotic or such a canned response, you could say, here is a sample email that I've written before or I've used before. Please, match the tone. Same as structure. Basically, whatever you want the intended outcome or purpose to be or structure to be, you want to be very specific so that the output comes out in that way. One thing that I personally use ChatGPT for is I use it a lot for formulas, just especially when I get stuck. So for example, if you wanted to take a closer look at your class data and identify, you would, identify what you want to happen. So for example, if I have my attendance sheet and in these columns, I mark them as attending, I want a formula to put in, let's say column A that totals the attendance. You want to just be very, very specific. And maybe provide an example so that way it knows exactly what you're asking for. Going along with that, we want to define the structure of that final product. So if you know what you want in terms of a format or for a layout, such as if you want a formal outline or if you're looking for a certain number of words or paragraphs or bullet points, you want to identify that in your prompt. So in the example that Jose had just showed you, we were very specific with our sample prompt that we wanted 2 to 3 sentences, and we still got very different results across the 3 AI chatbots. So it may not always be exact, but at least if you're giving it that initial framework, it's at least aligning with what you're looking for. If you're not 100% sure, it's also, once again, a great tool to brainstorm so you can see what that initial response generates. And then you can always respond with additional guidance to get the end result that you're looking for. Because once again, it is more like a conversation than just an initial Google search. And so this one that I've kind of tacked on to that race format or framework that ChatGPT used, we want to request sources and questions for the task. So if you are if your prompt requires basically a factual answer, I highly recommend that every single time as a best practice that you request that it include sources for Bard and ChatGPT. Bing kind of does it automatically for you. And don't just request them, but also check for inaccuracy. So make sure you're looking through the sources to make sure that they are still legitimate sources, that they are actually pulling the information that you're looking for. Just like, if I was in school and just Googling random resources, I wouldn't necessarily 100% trust Wikipedia. That's a good starting point, but we want to make sure that we are evaluating those sources just like we would as students. And also, before you submit your prompt, ask it what questions it has. So this will allow it to ask clarifying questions before attempting to produce the answer, and it will help reduce that back and forth. I've made this a best practice basically for myself. Anytime I submit a prompt, I always ask it if it has any questions. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's fine, and the responses are perfect. Other times, because of the complexity of my question, or maybe the language I used wasn't exactly clear, it will ask me questions back, so that way I can answer it, and then it will actually give me, in usually only a couple back and forth, the response that I'm looking for, versus me just repeatedly being like, that's not what I want, and expecting it to understand. It gives it the opportunity to kind of do that in advance. So the more detailed and specific we are in our prompts, the more accurate the output is likely to be. So sometimes I will caution that things can get a little lost in the back and forth when we are asking for repeated revisions or clarifications, or for them to fix one little piece of a larger prompt. Sometimes what I do is I'll start really broad just to kind of explore, brainstorm, kind of see what it kicks back to me. And then that in and of itself will kind of help me tailor down what I'm looking for. And if I feel like things are kind of starting to get lost, or certain pieces that had showed up earlier are now disappearing, I will just use what I've learned from that initial conversation and then create a brand new prompt, put it in a brand new chat. And that way it's giving me a more accurate initial response that contains everything that I'm looking for. And that way things don't get lost. And there were also other times, like I went to an old prompt that I had done like 3 weeks ago with an email and said, hey, I need to send a follow-up email with this information. And it pulled from the initial response that was like 4 chats back, and pulled that information, carried it through. So sometimes it's really good about it, and sometimes it can kind of sometimes lose some things as it goes. So just something to be aware of. So in terms of best practices, once again, we want to use very simple language, be as specific and detailed as possible, especially if you have a clear idea in your head of what you would like. Do not ever include personal identifying information for yourself or your students. Don't include links to documents, especially if they contain, well, really you shouldn't just in general, but especially if they contain any personal identifying information for you or your students. Always double check for accuracy, errors, and bias. I believe Rachel Riggs had brought this up in Digital Learning Day. If it wasn't her, it was another AI PD that I had attended. That instance that happened, I think, within the last year, where a lawyer had like a brief done by ChatGPT or whatever, and like a lot of the sources or court cases it was referring to weren't accurate. So you really need to like kind of double check its work to make sure that those issues aren't occurring. As part of that, you want to check the sources, which is why I recommend, if it's anything requiring some factual information, to request those sources and to double check those data sources for accuracy, errors, and potential bias. And then you can always reflect on what it's generating, evaluate it for what you need, and respond, and keep repeating that process until you get the output that you're looking for. So when we were kind of planning for this, I was trying to think of a resource to provide, because I've attended a lot of these trainings, and I feel like learning how to build these prompts can be a bit of a challenge initially, because of kind of the technology work that I do in the back end of systems. Like I do a lot of queries, and I kind of have that mindset where I'm thinking of like all the things that I need to specify. So I wanted to create something that could help support in learning that skill and those areas, that RACEF plus C framework. So created this Mad Lib style worksheet using that framework, in which you can kind of generate your own prompts. And I put in some commonly used options potentially, but you can also add your own. And this is a great tool that you can use as a beginner or even as an advanced prompt engineer. I use it when I'm like, you know what, my brain's not functioning today. I don't have the capacity right now to like think through everything that I need in this prompt. I've used it to just kind of quickly create something, and it's saved me time and some frustration using it, even with non-education specific prompts. I actually use it to generate a code to help create this exact thing that I'm going to share with you in a second. So I am going to send out the link for this, and we're going to spend a little time.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, you got it? Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
I was waiting for you to go through it first.
Gotcha. All right. So if you click on this link, can everyone see the Google Sheets copy thing on your screen? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So if you click on the link, it's going to actually copy this. So this is going to become your document. So no one else can access it except for you once you make a copy. I'm going to, because I do the cybersecurity training at EastCon, so I feel like it is my responsibility to tell you this. In general, you should not ever really save or add a file that has scripts to your account unless it is from a trusted source. I can promise you that this is a trusted script. It's just protecting the formula that creates the prompt, and it's also allowing you to easily clear it. So when you make a copy of it, it is going to basically take those scripts and add it to your account. Once again, I promise they're safe. There's nothing bad in there. And technically you can choose not to run them if you want. I do prompt you to. So when you go in, the first tab is going to be a directions tab. I ask that you click here. What it's going to do is it's going to run the script initially just to get it in place. And once again, this is going to protect a very, very, very vital piece of the sheet in its functionality. But you can hold off on doing this if you want. You're going to just click it once. It's going to take a second to run it. And I will show you what the scripts do if you want. So you can choose to hold off on running this until you see what it does. It's going to ask you to authorize it. You're going to click OK. You're struggling to get the link. Is it not showing up in the prompt for you?
Oh, that could be, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to share. Is it because of the scripts? I'm guessing probably because of the scripts. So what I'll do is I will create a version that doesn't have the scripts in it, and we will share that when we share the slide deck. So I apologize. I didn't think that would be an issue, but we will still give you it so you have it. So once you authorized OK, it's going to ask you to confirm the account. If you're going to use this in multiple accounts, you are going to have to repeat this process for every account. So I'm going to do it for my adult ed one. It's going to give you this, and you're basically going to just click allow. So this first page gives you kind of directions of everything I'm going to go over today. If we go to the second tab, this is the actual prompt builder. So it is Mad Lib style. Anywhere that there are these gray fields, you would just click to generate your prompt. So let's say that I am an adult education program administrator, and I want to create an email. An email is not listed here, so you don't have to just pick what's in the dropdowns. You can also type it. So I'm going to create an email. It is going to have that little red error just because it is not something listed in the dropdown. And then I want to create an email. So we've defined our rule. Now we're defining our action. Actually, I'm going to change that. Sorry. Create an adult. I'm an adult education teacher. So I'm going to create an email to students simulating an job interview invitation. That was the word I was looking for. I'm not going to get too specific with this just due to timing. So I'm telling them what I want them to do and the topic around it. Maybe I want it to also require the email should require the student to respond. And I want this to require some technical skills that align with ISTE and maybe SkillRise. And so you can click as many frameworks as you want. And then you can choose to select domains and levels if applicable. So maybe I wanted to align with ISTE's computational thinker. This may not be an exactly good reference for that. Uh-oh. And I just caught an error with it. So I will send an updated one, but we'll just leave SkillRise blank. And then we go to context, and this is maybe for some lower level GED students I'm working with. That's the target audience of this. And I want this email to be maybe descriptive, and I want it to be friendly because it's a job interview, and actionable. And once again, I want to differentiate it for lower level. And I can even specify. Once again, you can also add to these. So GED students. So now I have my context, right? Who my target audience is for, the tone and style of the prompt that I want it to generate, and any potential differentiation. And then I can provide examples and guidelines. So I do want it to integrate workforce readiness skills, and I don't want it to use any jargon. I can type in an example if I want. And then I can also provide some additional context on how it will be used, so that way the prompt can be targeted towards that. So you're in the survey used to practice workforce readiness skills and with the job application process, and to teach digital literacy skills from emailing and etiquette. Okay, so then I can set my format, right? So I want this to maybe be a 2-paragraph, let's say, email. And I don't need any additional structure guidelines for that. And then I can choose, once again, to cite sources. For this, we're not talking about anything factual, so I don't necessarily need to select that. But once again, as I mentioned, for best practice for me, I always ask to ask questions. And then everything I selected up here is now going to compile in a simple response right here. So that script that I mentioned, what that does is protect this. So if I click delete, it's going to disappear for a moment and it's going to bring it back. So this this formula is pulling a lot of information and formatting it in a certain way, which is why I created that script, because it is not easy to get this back. So just so you're aware of what that script is doing. So then I would just copy and paste this into my chatbot, and then it will generate that prompt for me. One other thing you can do, so up here I had added email because it wasn't available in my list. So because this is your document, and you may have ones that you repeatedly utilize, if you click on the little underlined icon below, it's going to take you to a link. All that is taking you to this list page in your document to the appropriate column. And you can either scroll down or just click that header, underlined header, and it's going to take you to that first available row, and then you can type it here. So if I know, oops, somehow I'm in comment only. This is what happens when you have multiple accounts logged in at once. So if I scroll down, I can type email, and now email will always be an option. When I go to Prompt Builder, we can see that little red arrow that was there warning me it wasn't an option is now gone. So this is just a tool available to you to utilize as you kind of start navigating your prompts and building them. The other script that I included, because as I was playing around with this and using it, I was like, man, it is getting annoying having to go through each field and delete every single thing over and over again. So if you click on this lovely clear prompt builder button, it's going to run a script that is just going to clear everything for you automatically. So those are what those two scripts do. So once again, generally, you do not want to do scripts unless you know it is from a trusted source. That is what those two are doing in this document, and you do not necessarily have to run it. It's optional, but that is what they're there for. And that is all I have for that, Jose, if we wanted to move on, or if there are any questions particular to this prompt builder before we go on to the next step. Thank you, Melissa. It took a lot of time. I used ChatGPT quite a bit to help with the scripts and the formulas. It was actually a huge time saver.
And just for context, this is, especially if you're getting started and you need to get like an idea of how to approach prompts, this gives you that guide into how to build it. It's not necessarily required for you to be proficient in prompting, right? It's a tool that's ready for you to use and help get that. Sometimes you're hitting that barrier that you don't know how to approach, and this is a great way for you to get to that point on closing that barrier, just that gap, right, to get to what you're looking for.
Yes, yeah. 100%. And you might not need to, like, as I mentioned before, when you're going over the frameworks, you might not need every single one every single time, but it's at least there as kind of a prompt for you to at least have you think about whether it is something that you should include to help generate that.
And I think it's just a perfect moment here to mention this, that if you need some help with the AA prompt builder, you could schedule tech support, which is free, and we could walk you through it. Brianna is one of the technology specialists that would be in that other side. And you could also, get that support that way in order to, create your prompt. If you need that extra, that one-on-one and that guidance is to, I want to do this. How do I do this? How do I enter? How I want to build a lesson plan. I want to get my lesson plan through ChatGPT, but I need some help. And it's a way to walk you through that process to get there.
So I am going to stop my share so I can find it. There we go.
So our next section, you have the best practices next. Oh no, never mind.
No.
We're going to the breakout. My bad. I'm on the wrong slide. Okay, so let me share screen. For lesson plan, can the bot estimate the time for an activity it generates? Yes. Now, you usually will need to ask it to tell you, because for the most part, it'll just give you the ideas. You might bullet point it. Depends on what AI tool that you're using. It just gives you what it thinks that you're asking. So while it tries to read between the lines, the more specific you are, the better, right? So if it doesn't, and it give you the entire list of activities, and you need the estimated time to say, I need you to break this down for me. Apply these activities at, for 20-minute sessions or something like that. And then it can do it that way, or just, give me this activity in 10, if I had 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, and it'll do the same concept, but then it'll just give you different ideas. So there's multiple ways that you could approach it. But right now we're going to be doing breakout rooms, and we have 2 breakout rooms. One will be for teachers, and 2 will be for administrators. For the teacher breakout, you could talk about lesson plans, lesson preparation and design, activity builder, and differentiation. And for the second breakout with administrators, so look, we could talk about, right, or just model and show curriculum outlines, alignment of standards and frameworks, brainstorming agency plan outlines and ideas. I'll open the breakout rooms. I know there was a question pending. We're gonna get that question after we come back. But if you have any questions before we jump in, feel free to put it in. I'm gonna open the breakout room. Brianna's gonna be in breakout room 1. I'll be in breakout room 2. If I find the breakout room button and I open the room, there you go. Okay, so you could join either or, and we'll see you. We'll be back at, what do you think, Brianna? Like 4:45-ish? Okay, so we'll be back in 15. Let's see. Any question? Oh, there was one question. I'm gonna kick it off with this question. And then if you have any other questions, you can put it in the chat. You could put it in the Menti. We could talk about it as well. So, okay, I've been told that any text you enter becomes public domain. So if I want help with my research and type in a chapter of my book, that text is now free for others to use. Is this true? It's sort of a yes and no, right? First off, the AI it's not, even if it's an open domain, which means that it could talk about pretty much anything. It doesn't mean that it's posting it all online, but it does live within the bot, right? So all that information that you're sharing with the AI is part of its data set in its database. It just like everything posted on the internet, where that's where most of its data set is coming from. It's kind of like it's adding to that, right? So while it's not like you could go into Google and find necessarily what you posted. If you kind of in the gray area where it could still share or be influenced by what you put there, and it could just share it forward as a response to someone else. That's still a gray area, which is why one of the important things is to not share, identifiable information. In regards with content, I've seen people write their blog posts, post it on the chat to have it corrected for them, and then they could post it. Technically, it does end up going still live, and it's their property. That's different. If it's something that's copyrighted material, you want to refrain for that unless you have a closed AI. I don't want to say Conmigo is one because I'm not sure, but that's like a AI that's dedicated directly with Khan Academy, that's integrated with the content with Khan Academy, and that's a little bit different. But if it's copyrighted, you're putting a chapter of a book that you purchased, that's a different story. We say it's better not to. It's not our property to share it. I don't know if that's pretty much answered the questions or not, but
No,
if you want to add in, Brina.
Can I add into that question then? So if it's anything that you want as your intellectual property, in this case, maybe it's not published yet, but it's going to be published, then you want to be careful about working on it in the chat bot. But now you're saying also that if I have a text and I want the bot to make me a jigsaw reading activity out of that, I also need to be careful because that's copyrighted material.
So if you're having, so let's look at it this way, right? If you have an article that's posted on a website, right? And you want to do the jigsaw activity from that website that's public for everyone to use, most likely the chatbot already has access to that because it's already published openly for people to see. If you're looking at a chapter book, let's say a Pearson book, just to give an example, that's different because that's not, you can't access that online. It's not openly accessible for you to share with everyone. That's where it gets gray area. Me personally, from what I've seen, and experience with different AI presentations and stuff, that's always a question that's never really answered. It's just, when it's intellectual property that's not yours, you want to tread carefully. And one of the things that everyone recommends to go to is the Creative Commons. Let me pull that.
And we also have a great training on open education resources, which are free and open to share.
Yes.
That you can watch, that shares a bunch of open education resources that could help with this. And I know there was one that like has some supplemental material that kind of semi aligns with Spec Fawn, and like those types of like copyrighted material.
Yeah, I've seen courses that have integrated AI to the content that it's worked on, and that's different because then it's not open source, it's just based on that material. So then using that AI for that, it's not the same because it's not everyone can access it. You can only access it if you have a license that goes with that publisher, let's say. So it's looking at that open resource where you could just access anything versus something that you have to purchase, let's say, to access that content. Brianna, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's a as I was kind of mentioning when we talked about it for like a quick second in our breakout room, it's like a weird gray area because it's so new. And it's just not as clear yet. But I think as long as you're like, we shouldn't be copying a book to use in our CDP, like, scanning and copying every page. It's the same idea. I think if you're trying to align it with something, and if you're just putting into the chatbot that, these are the core concepts that I want you to create something based on, and it's aligning with this resource, that's not infringing on the copyright. It's identifying the skills versus like taking a whole page out of a book that's copyrighted and saying like redo this so it's this. That's kind of, that's not okay. But like just to identify what you're trying to get them at would be.
Thank you very much for joining us. We have our next Knowledge Bytes in January. We're also going to be sending the link for the next one with the presentation and the recording.